All right, well, thank you all for joining us today for this MGA Midgrid webinar. Today we will be hearing a presentation from both Norman Bay, former FERC chairman and current partner at Willkie, Farr, and Gallagher, as well as Hannes Pfeifenberger, principal at the Brattle Group. They will be talking about a recent study that they did on intertie optimization. And the title of the study was The Need for Intertie Optimization, Reducing Customer Costs, Improving Grid Reliance, and Encouraging Interregional Transmission. So I will turn things over to both of you, and we're excited to learn a lot more about this topic today. Thank you, Hannes, and thank you, Mr. Bay, for being here today.
Thank you, Jeff. And
screen.
Thank you, Jeff. We're very pleased to be here presenting on intertie optimization, which we believe to be an idea whose time has come. And in our presentation today, we're going to cover a number of different topics. First, we'll talk about the case for intertie optimization between the regions, and we'll discuss some of the history, some of the background behind this concept of intertie optimization. Most importantly, you're going to hear that it is not a new concept, nor is it an untested one. Next, we'll discuss the potential value of intertie optimization. And you're going to hear that there is a tremendous potential value to intertie optimization in improving market efficiency, promoting reliability, and new interregional transmission. Then we'll talk about the regulatory case for intertie optimization. Obviously, it doesn't do much good to have an idea, even a good one, if you can't make the regulatory argument in support of the idea. And finally, we hope to leave a lot of time for a robust question and answer period. So with respect to the executive summary, here are a few key takeaways. First, that this idea has been around for a while. As far back as 2011, ISO New England and New York ISO recommended that intertie optimization be adopted between their markets. Instead, as you'll hear, the Commission implemented an alternative approach known as Coordinated Transaction Scheduling, or CTS. Next, you'll hear that CTS, unfortunately, has not lived up to its promise, that the market monitors have continued to criticize CTS, noting that power flows in the wrong direction between 40 to 50% of the time. In other words, it's going from the high-priced market to the low-priced market instead of the converse. Next, intertie optimization is not an untested concept. Instead, it has been implemented successfully in the Western energy imbalance market and in the EU through a concept known as market coupling. And this real-world experience has really demonstrated the substantial economic benefits of intertie optimization, the way in which it supports reliability, as well as the integration of renewables. One of the proposals currently pending before FERC is CAISO's Subscriber Participating Transmission Owner proposal. This is an important proposal because it relates to interregional merchant transmission and allows for the full day-ahead and real-time optimization of that transmission. So, putting it all together, we believe that the time is right for the Commission and stakeholders to consider intertie optimization, and that this intertie optimization can reduce market inefficiencies, these seams inefficiencies, as well as reduce barriers to the development of interregional transmission. You're going to hear that the economic benefits are really substantial. The absence of intertie optimization may mean that between 20 to 30% of total real-time energy value is lost, and that in contrast, implementing intertie optimization could save ratepayers $50 to $60 million per year for every 1,000 megawatts of interregional transmission. And very helpfully, FERC has the authority to implement intertie optimization either under its Section 205 authority in the Federal Power Act or its Section 206 authority. Hannes, with that, why don't you get us started with the case for intertie optimization between regions?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to go through this really swiftly. There's a lot of data that we've assembled in the white paper. But the reality is, if we look at just the market monitoring reports, they point out that interregional transmission is poorly utilized today. In this one market monitoring report, it shows that on the MISO PJM seams, when price differences exceed $10 a megawatt hour, so it's a good trading opportunity, during 50% of those hours, the power flows just go the wrong way. That means in real time, bilateral trades are not nimble enough to take advantage of market price differentials. Same is true on PJM New York seams. Atomic economics similar observe these intertie inefficiency on the MISO seams, including with SPP, and between New York ISO and ISO New England, where coordinated transaction scheduling has been implemented. There's no pancake transmission charges, yet the optimal real-time transactions are achieved during only 11% of all real-time trading intervals. So very poor utilization in real time. And it's been getting worse since 2018 for reasons we will discuss. This inefficiency is particularly pronounced in real-time markets because bilateral trades, even with CTS, have sort of a 1 hour delay in a way, or the forecasts that they depend on have a 1 hour delay, and they're just not very good in capturing real-time conditions. It's different in day ahead, where if you look at the PJM NISO seam, we see a difference of about $13 a megawatt hour, changing signs 3 times a day. So bilateral trades are pretty good keeping up with these day-ahead prices. Same on PJM MISO. But if you look in real time, it's really quite stunning. This is from the market monitoring report. We see price differences averaging $100 a megawatt hour, and we see signs, one ISO being higher than the other versus the other being higher than the first, changing signs between 50 and 60 times a day. So that is a lot of volatility that bilateral markets just can't keep up with, even if you just look at the hourly trades. But none of this is new. As early as 2003, Atomic Economics has identified the inefficient utilization of interregional transmission. In 2010, again, this has become an issue, and there's a larger study between MISO, PJM, New York, New England, and Ontario, saying you could save up to $300 million annually if interties would be used better. And in 2011, ISO New England and New York ISO have proposed to address these seams-related inefficiencies through intertie optimization. The link here, that paper is an excellent paper. 2011 could have been written today, so not much has changed in the last decade. So let's go into a little bit more about ISO New England and New York ISO proposed a decade ago, or a dozen years ago. They noticed that too little power is flowing in the correct direction during approximately 4,000 hours per year. And that's just not efficient. And those price differences are pretty large. And they estimated that if you could optimize the intertie between New York and New England, you could save $100 or $200 million annually if those interties could be optimized. They identified three main causes of these the poor utilization of the intertie. One is just the latency delay, that the time delay between when the intertie has to be scheduled through bilateral trades and when the power actually flows is just too long, and market conditions change within the hour or two, particularly now as we add more intermittent resources. There's also just non-economic clearing, that the ISOs just don't make decisions about the efficiency of the tie schedules. Those are just bilateral schedules. And we also have transactions cost, even though those transaction costs did not apply to New England and New York, because New England and New York have actually de-pancaked their seam. Even though they recommended intertie optimization, only CTS was implemented. So they, at the time, proposed two solutions. One is the full intertie optimization. They actually have a fully baked proposal on how that would be done in that 2011 paper. ISO New England staff has subsequently updated this optimization framework in 2014. There's a citation to it here. Proposing what they call a marginal equivalent decomposition method that was successfully tested through large-scale simulations and can be applied both to RTO seams and non-RTO seams. So this is not an idea. This is actually a proposal that was fully fleshed out in the 2011 white paper and subsequently refined. But as an alternative, coordinated transaction scheduling was proposed as a less ambitious, easier to implement first step. The ISOs recommended intertie optimization as the preferred solution because it was simply more efficient. It was also consistent with the ISO's existing roles of independent market administrators based on LMP settlements. And CTS, even at the time, was not expected to produce as complete price conversion and efficiencies. But at the time, optimization seemed to be a larger step than CTS, and so only CTS was implemented between New York ISO and ISO New England, and later between PJM and MISO. It was hoped that as a less complex solution, it might still be almost as efficient. The reality, when we look at this today, is that CTS has not at all been successful in reducing the seam-related inefficiencies. Atomic Economics pointed out that more than 40% of the CTS transactions ultimately unprofitable. And they recommended that CTS would have to be improved, and clearing would have to happen at a 5-minute interval to take advantage of the most recent 5-minute price differences, and not rely on forecasts that are outdated by the time you get to real time. The PJM market monitor has been pointing the inefficiency of CTS out since 2014, pretty much since it was first implemented. And that market monitoring unit recommends that intertie optimization with neighboring systems be implemented, and that this approach would just use supply curves on the seams between balancing authorities, similar to how the constraints are managed within the LMP market already. Again, plenty of evidence on how inefficient the seam is being utilized in real time. We do have a few pointers that tell us that intertie optimization is possible and is quite valuable, as we will see. the Western imbalance market, both the CalISO version, the EIM, and the SPP version as the EIS, they have been created to optimize in real time the available transmission across the seams between multiple balancing areas in the West. Obviously, this does more because it's a SCED, it's a region-wide security constrained economic dispatch method, so it's a full optimization. But the prime motivation behind that would be that any transmission that remains available in real time after bilateral trading closes is being optimized in these markets. And the value of these market transactions accrues to the neighboring balancing areas and any entity that contributes transmission that can be used for this type of optimization. The reality is, even though bilateral trading continues, adding optimization of real-time energy transactions really goes well beyond what can be achieved through bilateral trades by offering significant efficiencies. Because real-time optimization across balancing areas seems to have been so successful, both of the market operators are now developing day-ahead markets as well to supplement the real-time optimization. In Europe, we see something very similar, what they call flow-based market coupling between the national markets in Europe. So whatever transmission is left available after bilateral trading closes in day-ahead or the intraday trading is being optimized in coordination between the national market operators. And because this has been so successful in continental Europe, in Central Europe, it is now being expanded to all of Scandinavia as well. As we have heard earlier, CalISO has also recognized that many of the interregional transmission projects that are being built or have been proposed are merchant transmission projects. So they're not automatically under the control of the ISOs. So CalISO has implemented or is proposing to implement a subscriber PTO proposal. Basically, it's tailored to integrate any capacity available on merchant projects into market optimization. And this is now being proposed for Trans-West Express, which is an HVDC line from Wyoming to Utah to Southern California. And the idea would be that subscribers on that merchant line have first right to the capacity that they subscribe, but any capacity left unutilized or unsubscribed would be contributed to the market and optimized in the larger Western footprint, not just within CalISO, but also within EDAM and EIM. The proposal has been filed at FERC in September. The idea is that the entire facility would be under ISO control, that subscribers have priority rights, so they get a perfect congestion hedge on their subscribed transmission capacity, but anything unscheduled could be made available for regional and interregional market use, both in day-ahead and real time. And the CalISO or the larger EIM and EDAM market would optimize the merchant line just as they optimize all other regulated transmission. Because regulated customers do not pay for a merchant line, the CalISO would pay a non-subscriber usage charge to compensate for any market use of the merchant facility. And it would be paid from the access charge and wheeling revenues, which will increase because the additional interregional transfer capability is actually increasing the wheeling revenues that Gallagher would collect, and customers benefit from the lower cost imports facilitated through this type of arrangement. So what is the value of intertie optimization? It is useful to look to EIM, even though EIM does more than just intertie optimization between two neighboring regions. It includes many more now. Actually, as of 2023, I think we have 22 balancing areas, so many more seams being optimized. But what we're seeing is about $4 billion in total savings since the EIM was created a decade ago. And nowadays we see about $300 to $400 million of savings per quarter across the footprint that now includes much of the West. SPP's market, EIS, as a smaller footprint and has been implemented more recently, is seeing similar savings. But we don't need to look to EIM to get a sense of how valuable it would be to use interregional transmission more effectively. The Lawrence Berkeley lab has analyzed real-time price differences and found that there's significant real-time congestion that, if relieved, would offer significant savings. And what you see here are the savings, the annual savings per 1,000 megawatt of transfer capability. This is for the decade from 2012 to 2021. And you see between SPP and MISO, for example, about $150 million per year per 1,000 megawatts and $100 million between MISO and PJM. The study also found that 40 to 80% of this value is concentrated in just 5% of all hours of the year. So you have to be very nimble to take advantage of these savings. In fact, 20 to 30% of these savings are in the top 1% of all hours. So we need something that is nimble enough to take advantage of these savings. What it means for intertie optimization is that you can immediately create benefits by increasing real-time transaction over the existing grids. Implementation cost is very low. It's just software. You don't have to build transmission. You don't have transmission cost allocation that you need to worry about. The ISO settlement systems are already designed to provide LMP-based compensation. And this would also increase the value of new interregional transmission, because we're talking about building new interregional transmission, and we have many merchant line proposals that would add interregional transmission. But if we can't take full advantage of the interregional transmission, we really can't get the full value of anything we would be building. And these type of values have been more pronounced recently. LBNL's 2023 update that allows us to compare individual years for 2021 and 2022, you can see that because of big weather events and things like that, the value of interregional transmission has been quite high. You see between SPP and MISO about $400 million a year per 1,000 megawatts, about $200 million a year between PJM and MISO. You see some big values between New England and New York. And, you know, in 2021, when you had the winter storm Uri, you had very, very large values for interregional transmission in the Midwest, and ERCOT, of course, as it was affected by that winter storm. We have done our own analysis of what the volatility of price differences between SPP, MISO, and PJM. And we found that if you have to trade between these markets with a 1 or 2 hour delay of either price forecasts or trading schedules, bilateral trading schedules, you can only capture about 70 to 80% of the value in real-time market. In other words, the existing system loses between 20 and 30% of the total real-time value, assuming you can trade with a 1 or 2 hour delay in response to observed market prices. That means it's about 50 to 60 million per year for every 1,000 megawatts of intertie capacity. That recognizes that some of the values that we see on the previous slides are in fact captured through bilateral markets. But bilateral markets have limits because of they're just not nimble enough to respond to how quickly real-time prices can change. And real-time prices really change on a 5-minute basis, and nobody can trade on a 5-minute basis. So this value can only be captured by system operators through automated operational means such as intertie optimization or a region-wide skid like the Western imbalance market. But because many of the new interregional transmission are merchant transmission lines, any intertie optimization needs to be suitable for merchant lines as well, which means intertie optimization revenues would need to be accrued to either the transmission owner or subscribers. Whoever pays for the transmission should get a benefit for it. If for regulated transmission that customers are paying for it, any benefit on regulated transmission from interregional tie optimization would go to loads. For merchant lines, it should probably go to the owner or the subscribers of that merchant line as the CAISO subscriber PTO proposal envisions. This is just a little bit more detail to the analysis we have done, but here you basically see that there is significant value of trading, say, 1,000 megawatts between the RTOs. We looked at 2020, 21, 22, but with a 1 hour delay, you miss between 14 and 40% of that full value. And with 2 hour delay, it's even worse. So that's how we are basically coming up with that 20 to 30% lost value due to the lack of intertie optimization. So I'll turn it back to Norman to take us through the regulatory case for intertie optimization.
Thanks, Hannes. So Hannes has explained the background behind this concept of intertie optimization. As we said, it's not a new concept, and it's not an untested one. And he's also explained the really compelling economic benefits that would flow from intertie optimization. So now let's look at the regulatory case for intertie optimization. FERC has authority under Section 205 of the Federal Power Act to accept proposals that are just and reasonable. So that's the key. Is this proposal just and reasonable? And when you look at what FERC has done over the years, it has long been concerned over the inefficiencies created by market seams. I mean, this concern goes all the way back to Order 888 and Order 2000, which set up the framework for the RTO ISO market. So the concern has been a long-standing one with the Commission. And FERC has a duty to address these seams issues because of its obligation to ensure that rates remain just and reasonable. And so there's a lot of precedent here for FERC to address these market seams. And some of that precedent relates to CTS itself, which FERC accepted between ISO New England and New York ISO, between New York ISO and PJM, and between PJM and MISO. Now, importantly, when FERC accepted the ISO New England, New York ISO proposal, it said that if that CTS turned out not to help out consumers as much as the Commission hoped, it was willing to revisit this concept of what it called tie optimization, or which we've been calling intertie optimization. So the Commission left the door open to revisit how best to address seams-related market inefficiencies. We've also seen FERC use its Section 205 authority to accept the Western Energy Imbalance Market proposal, and FERC is currently contemplating CAISO's subscriber PTO proposal under Section 205 of the FPA. Under Section 205 of the FPA, we think it's clear that FERC could accept a proposal from the RTO's ISOs if they made such a filing. Again, the standard is one where FERC would have to find that the proposal is just and reasonable. And here, of course, the argument is pretty clear that accepting the proposal would be just and reasonable for all of the reasons that Hannes explained in doing the economic analysis as to what happens under CTS now and the inefficiencies that have resulted, the market monitors raising their concerns, and on the other hand, the benefits of intertie optimization. So I think the case is pretty clear that if an RTO ISO submitted an intertie optimization proposal to the Commission, that the Commission would have the clear authority to accept that proposal. So that's the case under Section 205 of the FPA. The more interesting case is this one. What happens if the RTO's ISOs do not make a filing? Here we believe that FERC could require intertie optimization through the exercise of its authority under Section 206 of the FPA. Section 206 of the FPA requires FERC or a complainant to show that the existing rate is unjust and unreasonable, and that the replacement rate, in contrast, is just and reasonable. So the question here would be, how would you show that CTS is not just and reasonable, and that intertie optimization is just and reasonable? Here, I think that the record actually supports FERC's exercise of authority under Section 206. And there are a number of reasons why I reached that conclusion. First, the EIM has proven the value of intertie optimization. Consumers across the West have seen more than $4 billion in benefits since 2014. In contrast, significant seams issues persist across the RTO's ISOs that have CTS. As Hannes has pointed out, the market monitors have identified wrong way power flows between 40 to 50% of the time under CTS. And this is costing consumers a lot of money when power flows from a high price market to a low price one instead of the converse. Another reason, attempts to fix CTS have not worked, and CTS-related inefficiencies have increased over time. As we've seen, as energy market prices have become more volatile in the real-time market, the inefficiencies have increased. And this volatility, this price volatility, has occurred in part because of the increasing integration of variable resources. We know that these inefficient power flows are costing consumers hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They also reduce competition in the markets because lower priced power cannot reach higher priced markets. In addition, seams inefficiencies impair reliability and resilience because they impede the timely flow of power during scarcity conditions, including during extreme weather events. And that last point is important because we know that extreme weather events are increasing in frequency and severity. We saw during Winter Storm Elliott that the grid was tested in a number of different regions in the country. And so the failure to optimize interties means that existing infrastructure is underutilized and that the benefits of interregional transmission are not fully realized or compensated by the markets, which in turn reduces the incentive to build interregional transmission and results in a planning process that undervalues its benefits. And so for a whole host of reasons, we believe that FERC has the record now to use its Section 206 authority and could do a rulemaking, for example, to require the use of intertie optimization across the RTO-ISO markets. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that the time is right and to consider intertie optimization, that there would be a lot of benefits to that because it would reduce market seams, related inefficiencies, and reduce barriers to the development of interregional transmission, especially for merchant lines. We also know that the New York ISO, ISO England, Potomac Economics called for intertie optimization more than a decade ago to basically address these market inefficiencies, but that CTS was implemented. We know that CTS has not lived up to its promise and that the market monitors have continued to criticize it. So again, intertie optimization is not a new idea, and it's also not an untested one because we've seen it being implemented in the Western energy imbalance market and in the EU with market coupling, and that the benefits from using intertie optimization have really been significant. Then CAISO currently has its subscriber PTO proposal pending before FERC, which would integrate the available capacity on merchant interregional transmission. And finally, that not only is the economic case a compelling one, but that FERC would have the legal authority under Section 205 or Section 206 of the FPA to implement intertie optimization. So with that, we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Hannes and Norman, for a great presentation here. Yes, as they said, the floor is open for questions. Please feel free to either click the raise the hand button and unmute yourself when called on, or type any questions into the chat. While folks are thinking, I will also just mention that in the chat I did put a link to a Brattle website that has a copy of the report, some frequently asked questions, and other information on the study. All right, I see Matt Prorock has his hand up. Matt, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to both of our presenters for a great presentation. Could you help me better understand, you showed in a slide, Hannes, I believe this was one that you presented, that the IMMs have recommended reducing the transaction time for the CTS process to every 5 minutes relative to what it is today. Could you help me understand kind of the difference between that solution and intertie optimization and sort of what the different expected outcomes of those two approaches may be?
Yeah, no, Matt, very good question. Let me just point out the PJM market monitor has given up on CTS and is recommending intertie optimization. Potomac Economics between PJM and MISO thinks that one way to do that is basically through improved CTS, where rather than having CTS be sort of a forecast for the next hour and schedules having or bids needing to be submitted like 75 minutes before every real-time interval, that CTS should really work on a 5-minute basis, and second, be responsive to the most recent 5-minute real-time signal rather than an hour ahead forecast of what real-time prices would be, because ISOs are not even able to forecast price differences across seams very well. I think If you do that right, you end up, these two approaches might end up converging, because if you look at the 2014 paper, that IEEE paper that is cited in our report, ISO New England staff has actually developed a mechanism that would basically do just that. Take the current 5-minute information that exists with all the constraints and available transmission, and basically schedule the next 5 minutes. And they have shown through a large-scale simulation that that would achieve an outcome that is very close to a full optimization. So I would think that if you do it right, these two approaches of either refining CTS or just going for intertie optimization could get you to the same place. But I think the reality is bilateral trades are just not very good at 5-minute real-time trading. And as the experience in Europe and the EIM has shown, we should just go to intertie optimization, and whatever is left available after bilateral trades close, the ISOs have the tools and means and settlement processes to optimize. So I would think if I had to take sides, I would just go with the PGM market monitor recommendation and say, let's just do intertie optimization. ISO New England and New York have proposed a method that could have been implemented a decade ago, and that proposal has since been refined significantly. So we have the tools, we have the means. I hope that answers your question.
Very much so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question we have Wendy Breadhold has her hand up. If Wendy, if you could unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. One is whether or not there is a carbon emission reduction associated with interties and whether that's something that you measured. And the second question is whether this is expected to reduce the expected need to double or triple the transmission in the US currently.
Yeah, Wendy, really good questions. Intertie optimization won't do any more than the current ISO markets are doing. So what we do find is that as more renewables get integrated and curtailments of renewables increase, a market can optimize the transmission system better and reduce the curtailments and produce greenhouse gas benefits. In the West, as you may know, California, within the EIM footprint, is in a greenhouse gas region, and the intertie optimization implemented through a EIM is looking specifically at the greenhouse gas implications of their optimized dispatch. So that is fully taking into consideration the greenhouse gas policies that a subset of the states in EIM have, and it has proven to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We've done our study on adding the day-ahead market in the West, and that also shows that the optimization across balancing areas and taking advantage of the full transmission grid, some of it which remains unused in real time currently, does in fact reduce curtailments and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But it depends a little bit on how you implement it. I mean, the market by itself is minimizing costs. So any greenhouse gas policies would have to be reflected in the market in some form or fashion. So intertie optimization wouldn't be able to do anything more on greenhouse gases than what the MISO and PGM markets currently do. With respect to your second question, does it reduce the need for expanding interregional transmission? And my answer is no, because the models that are being used to estimate what the optimal amount of transmission would be, whether it's the Princeton study or the many DOE studies or the studies that are summarized in the DOE National Transmission Needs Report, those are all studies that use models that optimize the available transmission capacity. So intertie optimization is necessary to be able to use the transmission that these studies assume can be used efficiently. So if these studies say we can reduce total customer costs by doubling or tripling interregional transmission, that wouldn't be affected. The reality would be without intertie optimization, the efficiencies that these studies document couldn't be reached.
Great. Next question comes from Matt Lacey. Matt, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Norman and Hannes. Great presentation. So I have a comment and a question. The comment is, or more an observation. I was surprised to see how much of the value can be achieved through bilateral trading. I wouldn't think that would be that high, but so it's just an interesting fact. And then you put forth a really compelling argument here for it. So what tends to be the resistance in areas where it has not been implemented? So the RTOs, the TOs, the marketers, the generators, what is it?
Well, that's a really good question, Matt. And we've asked, I mean, we've actually talked to all the market monitors, including SPP's market monitoring unit. And we sort of asked that question in particular to New England, which was the sort of driving force behind the intertie optimization. So what happened? Well, once the decision was made to see how far you could go with CTS, people felt, let's give it some time. So CTS was implemented now roughly 10 years ago. So people wanted to give it whatever 5+ years of time to see how good it could be. So I would say only now is the time where I said, well, I think we've given it enough time. The reality is that the PJM market monitor has recommended intertie optimization since 2014. So why hasn't it been acted on? Well, as you know, there are many things the ISOs should be doing or could be doing. And what ends up getting done are the sort of higher priority items. So intertie optimization just hasn't risen yet to a high priority item that would focus RTO resources on that. And as you know, when it comes to seams related issues, whether it's transmission planning or generation interconnection or intertie optimization, it's even harder to get the ISOs interested because it's hard enough to fix your own market and improve your own market if you have to look across the seam and try to improve things in coordination with another ISO. That challenge might seem daunting. But we think that now that everybody's talking about new interregional transmission, that we see merchant lines getting built, particularly in the West, that add new interregional transmission, that we see that winter storms and resource diversity have dramatically increased the value of interregional transmission, that we have to look at the transmission we have, make sure we have a market that can take advantage of the transmission, because otherwise adding more transmission isn't really taking full advantage of that investment.
I would agree with Hannes. I think it's been a bandwidth issue as much as anything, and that's probably even happening at FERC, right? Because FERC has been focusing on interconnection queue reform, and now it's still working on its regional transmission planning and cost allocation rulemaking, and so there's just there's a lot going on, and one potential, I think, promising sign is that FERC has now been considering interregional transfer capability. And if you look at that issue, I think you can also examine intertie optimization, because intertie optimization basically allows you to optimize the use of existing capacity and also help support the development of new capacity. So it could be a fairly elegant market-based solution for the commission to consider as it's looking at ways to increase interregional transfer capability. And the nice thing from the standpoint of state commissions is it doesn't involve, really difficult cost allocation issues, which always arise when you're looking at new infrastructure. And not only that, but it will save consumers a lot of money. And I don't even know, Hannes, what the benefit to cost ratio is, but it's got to be very, very high, given the fact that the investment here is in software or algorithms that can allow for the optimization at the interties.
Yeah, no, we don't know exactly how much the software cost would be, but the settlement systems based on LNP and concession revenue allocations are already in place. We know that in the West, for a new balancing area to join EIM is a fairly trivial cost compared to the billions of dollars that we're talking about expanding interties. Now, we still will have to expand interties. There's no doubt about that. But I think to do that, we have to be able to fully utilize it. And I think the time has come, and the time is now to look at that. It's low-hanging fruit. You might also notice, Matt, that we didn't attach anything else to the intertie optimization. There are many more seams-related issues, but stuff quickly gets you into capacity markets or cost allocations and so on. So we said there is one topic here that has been pointed out for some time where we had a fully baked proposal by us in New England and New York a decade ago. The smaller step hasn't worked. And now, particularly looking at the last couple of years, we could have used intertie optimization and save customers a lot of money. So we think now is the time, and we hope that with webinars such as this, we can create enough momentum to motivate folks to move forward on this, despite all the many other things that need to be done in the market and on the transmission system.
I'll just put a final plug. If you have any additional questions, folks, either put them in the chat or please click the raise your hand button. See nothing. Hannes or Norman, if you have any final thoughts or comments, certainly love to hear those as we close out the webinar.
Yeah, I encourage you, if you're interested in this, look at the frequently asked questions document that we put together. It's posted with the presentation at the websites that Jeff put into the chat. We have received a number of questions, including implementation-related questions that we try to highlight in that frequently asked questions document.
Jeff, thank you for giving us the opportunity to meet with you and the members here. And we look forward to further discussion on this issue. And certainly, if anyone has questions, they should feel free to reach out to Hannes or me.
I see that another question popped up in the chat from Robert Schulte, whether these are really savings or just reallocations of costs among market participants. These are real savings. If you look at the Western EIM, this is replacing higher cost generation with lower cost generation by taking advantage of these trading opportunities. Just like wholesale power markets can reduce total costs by more optimally dispatching generation and more fully utilizing the transmission system, these are the same kind of savings. Whenever you have power flowing from high-priced markets to low-priced markets, you're substituting high-priced generation or low-priced generation with high-priced generation. So there's some real savings, and these savings can be split between market participants. What happens in the West, for example, is that some of these savings show up as congestion between the balancing areas, in addition to offering lower cost generation to the balancing areas. But the trading value, if you don't fully eliminate the price difference, shows up as a congestion revenues that is split between the exporting balancing area and the importing balancing area, just like the value of a bilateral trades would be split between the buyer and the seller. I hope that answers your question, Robert.
All right. Well, thank you both, Norman and Hannes, for really a great discussion here on intertie optimization. Just a general announcement for folks. Our next mid-grid session will be our quarterly meeting in January 25th, starting at 9:30 a.m. Central. That will be a discussion that focuses on siting and community engagement issues, as well as some other topics. But registration is open for that now, so we hope to see you on that call in January. So thank you all for joining us today, and please have a good rest of your day and week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Bye.